Mecha Break is the new multiplayer mech game by Amazing CSUN Games that is currently in a closed beta, which is not true at all. I believe you have to watch like 15 minutes to get a beta key on Twitch drops, if I'm not mistaken. And I think it's worth talking about because it's actually trying something different. We don't really see a lot of multiplayer mech games, to be honest. And the ones we do get that have a little bit of an active community don't really have that as a focus. I'm talking things like Armored Core 6. Now, if you're anything like me, Armored Core 6 puts you down a path of starting to play a lot more mecha games and discovering that you love them and that they're really, really cool. And this is going to fit in really well if that is you. If you want more mechs after playing that game or after having gone down that rabbit hole, maybe watching some Gundam or something in the last months, you'll probably enjoy this, but it is not the actual mecha multiplayer game that I was hoping for, let's say. At least not yet. So what's going on with it? Do I recommend it, and to whom do I recommend it? Well, we're going to get into all of that. So first I'm going to briefly explain what the game is about, because it does have a lot going on. Then I'm going to talk about the things that I really like about this game, and then the parts where I'm a bit skeptical. Timestamps below as always. So Mecha Break is an online, for the moment, PvP only multiplayer mech action game. When it comes to how the game handles, if you have played Armored Core 6, well, it's going to feel very similar to that, which means it feels really good overall. At the moment, there is a total of 15 different mechs, and when you enter into a match, you have to choose which mech you want and lock it in. There can be no duplicates of a mech on a team, and all of the mechs have very unique kits that fulfill very specific roles and purposes. For me, that's one of the defining features that I didn't expect within Mecha Break, is that this is a team game. There are certain mechs that directly counter other mechs. And while you can find success with pretty much any of them, there are some fights that you would very much not take because you are very unfavored. Simply put, some mechs will just not do well against others, and in certain extreme cases, a mech can destroy another one with very little effort, whereas to win that counter matchup, you would have to put in quite a lot of effort and possibly time. That time element is really important in a primarily objective-based game like this one, where the TTK is pretty high unless you really catch someone off guard, and the respawn timers are around 20 to 25 seconds if you count in dropping down as you respawn. So when it comes to the strategic side of things, it really does put your team at a disadvantage every time you lose somebody. So spending a lot of time doing something inefficient can be even more felt when it comes to the pace of the battle. Now, there's a really important part to distinguish here from a shooter and classify it more as an action game because of all of the different ways that the mechs play. You could more or less compare it to something closer to a MOBA or a hero shooter because each of these mechs has access to often 5 different buttons, 5 different abilities that they can do, from primary and secondary weapons that can be very different from each other, sometimes a offensive weapon on the primary and a shield or a defensive weapon on the secondary. But from there, they can have all sorts of things, from shields to more offensive abilities to things that create distractions or give mobility or straight up transformations. And a lot of these are governed either by the energy or the stamina system or straight up on cooldowns, meaning that it does have that strategy element of keeping your cooldowns and making sure you have them. On average, I would say that most mechs have access to about 5 different buttons or abilities, and that's because a lot of them have 5 out of the gate, but when they transform, they gain access to modified versions of them or to completely new abilities. And this philosophy extends down to the fact that there are supports, which are the only ones that can heal other mechs. Otherwise, there is no health regen in the game. Your shields can recharge naturally, but your health won't regen. And while some mechs have access to shields or protection drones or things that can zone, other mechs will have access to things that break that line of defense, that can attack a lot of different targets for the different mechs that can set up decoys or shields, and it's all balanced in the ways that you might expect, with some of the faster melee-centric mechs being very all-or-nothing type of affairs, where if you manage to dodge them, they really don't have much to do, or if they get focus fired by multiple people, they can't do anything. There's very big, powerful mechs that do a lot of damage, but they require setting up or actually going into a stance where they just root into the ground or go into a tank form or something like that. You have flying mechs that go all over and do chip damage, as well as some snipers that if they ever get caught out by one of those melee chasers, they will just blow up immediately. Although some of those can actually be the most difficult to catch, honestly. So within reason of everything here and within balance, I'm sure that there's some mechs that are overall performing better than others. Every single one is very different, and the things that they share in common is that they all have their shields, their HP bar, and then their energy bar, which governs most of what you do. Doing nothing will regen your energy bar, but everything from thrusting or staying in the air flying while thrusting, and very often using your weapons and your abilities will consume energy. And if you are ever caught in a situation where you have no energy against pretty much any mech that has any form of stagger, they can stagger lock you and destroy you, because normally your only way out of that is by spending energy, be that with a dash or some ability. So when you combine how much of this is third-person shooting and abilities and melee, it's very unique, and that's one of the best things about it. There's not really something like this for it to compete against on the market. So I can't complain that it's just another hero shooter or something like that, because it isn't. It is a mech game, and it does fulfill that. The only part where I am a bit disappointed is that, at least in the beta so far, there is no customization of each of the mechs. They are very specifically made to do what they do, and with kits that are very tightly created around the role that they are meant to accomplish in battle. So even though there is a weapons menu that allows you to select different weapons, there are no alternatives. And I don't know if that's going to be for alternate weapons or for skins or something like that. But for me, a big part about the mech fantasy is kitting out my mech and changing some of the parts around. And the only current customization gameplay-wise that's in the game at the moment is tied to the live service and spending, so we'll talk about that a little bit later. Once you find a mech that you enjoy playing, and if it is open and you can play it in a match, you will load into one of the different maps, and each of the maps is basically its own mode. Be that domination or escort, or a big map with different random control points that appear that you need to capture, or a round-based no respawn team deathmatch. Basically, each map is tied to one of these game modes. I believe there are 5 different maps, and they are all quite different and fun to play, although not all of them are equally as fun. And everybody will have their own preferences. I think that the game works better when you're more focused on objectives, so things like escort or capturing the different areas around a map randomly. Those 2 modes and those 2 maps specifically are my favorites, but everybody's going to prefer something different, and it's a question that I have of how they're actually going to make more maps. Are they going to be within these existing modes, or are they going to make a new mode for each map? How will this work? Because if for some reason you dislike a lot of the game modes, you only like playing one of them, you're going to be trapped in the same map for that game mode over and over again. And what is initially a lot of variety that the game presents will be quickly limited to just one map and one game mode. But overall, the feeling of identity within each mech and how they play in battle, how it feels to move them around, how it feels to shoot people, to smack people around with your huge battle axe, to do whatever you want to do, is all great. The game looks very, very impressive. Reports I've seen say that it runs very well on pretty much anything, despite how good it looks, and it offers some very, very fast and frenetic gameplay that stands out from the crowd, which I think does give it a fighting chance to at least find its audience and survive within the live service multiplayer era that we live in. Or one of the reasons I think you should jump into the beta is because at the moment there is no monetization system. You can basically unlock everything right after the tutorial and try everything that there is in the game. Because that is going to be my biggest concern. The developers keep saying that the game won't be pay to win at all, but we do know that you're going to have to unlock the different mechs as time goes on. You will not start with all 15 available, and the battle pass or microtransactions, the overall progression is not going to be purely cosmetic because it also includes mods. Now, at the moment within the beta, the only cosmetics that there are paint jobs for the mechs, which are of course cool, and things for your pilot, which is your avatar that you can customize. There's a pretty in-depth character customization feature, and you can customize your character after having made it, and there's different clothing and different little accessories that you can place on your pilot. Your pilot really only shows up on your player card, or if you get an MVP, or for you yourself to see at the end of a match when they pop out of the mech. However, I don't doubt that this will be relatively popular. You can create some very anime-looking avatars in the game, be that both male and female. I will say that at the moment, there's not a lot of cool-looking outfits for the guys, and there is some very anime-looking things for the girls. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's going to be more popular. When it comes to my own avatars, I normally make them men, but if I had known that the outfits for the women avatars were going to be that much cooler, I would have done that this time around. Expect all of your anime mech characters to be very well represented here, trust me. Aside from that, we don't know what types of cosmetics are going to be available for the different mechs in the game, but we do know that we can equip mods, and this is where that pay-to-win claim gets a little bit iffy. Mods come from loot crates, they come in various different rarities, and you can equip 3 of them in each slot of your mech, which I do believe that leads to 18 mods in total. I could be wrong, somewhere around there. These mods normally give you a benefit in one area, let's say, for example, plus 8% energy regen when you bottom out and lose all of your energy, when you become exhausted, but minus 4% to fuse charge or something like that. So there is a net benefit to gain here. In this case, it would be a 4% positive on something, which means that they do want to encourage some sort of grind, especially down the line, where getting a bunch of legendary mods will give you X amount percentage benefit to your stats. And while the things that these things affect and how much they affect them don't seem game-breaking or game-winning, and I do believe them when they say, obviously, that the player with the most skill is going to win, it is still slightly pay to win. If you can get more stats than your opponent, if you can be objectively better than your opponent on paper when you take the skill element out, to me that is pay to win. And tying that all to a loot crate system, which from what I understand does have a way of crafting things out of what you get to chase down the specific things you want, but still, it's paying for more power or paying to get that power faster, however you want to visualize it. That is indeed my biggest complaint with the game so far, which means that I don't have that many complaints, which is great. But I also don't feel like it set my world on fire. I have those reservations about customizing my mech, those reservations about how the different modes and the maps are going to work, and how the progression overall in the game is going to function. But even once I take all of those away, I have a great time playing the game, but I haven't found myself completely sucked in yet. I've had a great time, and I really can't pinpoint what's missing for me, because I really do love this gameplay style, and I think that what it's presenting is very unique, enough for me to say that I can't find this anywhere else. But unlike a game like Marvel Rivals, which I could see myself grinding in solo queue, and yes, I am a very hardcore Overwatch player for many, many years, but I don't see myself doing the same thing at the moment with Mecha Break. I think that if I had a group of friends, I would probably grind it a bit and have a good time, but there is a big distinction in just how much the game vibes with me on whether I'm willing to play it alone or if I require friends to really hop in. However, that is an incredibly personal opinion, because I think that the game that they've crafted here works very well, is very fun to play, has excellent feedback on everything, and while it might not fulfill my personal fantasy of mechs by not having that sort of customization for it, as a team multiplayer game that blends shooter with melee, with mobility and strategy in your team composition, I think it's doing an excellent job, and I would highly recommend that you check it out, especially during this open beta period where you can try out all of the mechs and discover for yourself if this is something that when it comes to its final launch and when all of those progression methods are put into it, if it's still going to be worth your time or not. I'm definitely going to keep an eye on Mecha Break. I will probably put it into the rotation of games that I play with my friends, and I'll probably be back to report on it at launch. But that is my review so far, and if you enjoyed it, remember to hit the like button, and then maybe even check out the channel. Consider subscribing, because I do a lot of different things here on YouTube. As per usual, a huge shout out to my patrons up on the $1 patron wall, and if you would like to go a step beyond in supporting me, you can check that down in the description below. I've been Mug Thief, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon.